is Kate Fletcher and I'm a funeral celebrant. It is my privilege to be conducting this service for Paul today. It is testament to the extraordinary qualities of our friend Paul that so many have come to pay tribute. And we know that many more would have wanted to be here today if it were not that they live thousands of miles away. Nonetheless, we know you are with us in mind, heart, and spirit. To lose a partner, friend, colleague, as amazing as Paul is so very difficult to accept. Paul, who had touched so many people's lives with his music, his friendship, his care, and his love, will be hugely missed. As Abraham Lincoln said, in the end, it's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. In Paul's case, he packed an awful lot of life into his 76 years, and his legacy will live on even after we who are here are gone. For his music is now part of the heritage of those aspiring to create, although not many will ever match the sheer prolificacy of his artistic works.
Hello, my name's Rory Evans. I just wanted to take some time to tell you about my friend Paul Brett. This is one of his Vital guitars. I thought it was appropriate to be holding this. I met Paul and Mish for the first time at a guitar show, the Olympia, when I was still 16 or 17. And Mish let me have a go on one of Paul's great old guitars. I think it was a Gibson L1 or something. And then we got chatting and Paul came over and showed me all of this crazy stuff, the thumb buster and other things he had with him. And over a couple of years we got to know each other at other events and stuff until he was kind enough to book me to play at the North Wales guitar show he does in Pwllheli, or did in Pwllheli. And that was the first kind of foreign gig that I did, and the most I had got paid for a gig up to that point. And introduced me to brilliant people that I got to stay with. And then through that we did the festival a number of times, and he introduced me to the guys at JHS and convinced them to let me have my own signature guitar, design this guitar, and I never would have had this without Paul. I'm so proud of it. And I think of him, every day when I play this guitar. He was kind of a force of nature, as everyone knows, and I never considered the idea that he could die because I didn't think he was the kind of person that would do something like that. But I suppose we'll keep him in our memories, and he never really will. I just wanted to send this message out to say how much I love Paul. He was a great friend to me and a great encouragement and a hilarious, crazy old bastard. I'm going to miss him terribly. So think of him today. Cheers.
I met Paul back in 1982. He became my mentor, my producer, eventually my manager. The first recording I ever did was one of Paul's songs that he wrote, Gold is Green, back in 1982. He got me my first record deal. He got me my second record deal. He introduced me into, obviously, because I was a writer back then. I was a singer, writer, performer, but I wasn't really recording commercially. And Paul bridged that gap. He moved me from doing what we was doing. I was working with a gentleman by the name of Livingston Brown at the time. We were co-writing, and he got us our first publishing deal as well. So that was our first publishing deal that we got. So yeah, we got signed in London. Funny stories, Paul. Well, I can remember Paul, his bird. I can remember he had a bird called George, and George did cause a lot of mischief over the years. The one that I remember was the night I stayed over, because I had an early studio call the next day, and the bird George decided to dive bomb my afro and keep me awake all night. So in the end, I spent the whole night under the covers, just trying to get some sleep, and he didn't stop. He just continued the whole night. In the morning, Paul asked me why I looked so tired, and I told him, and he was going, George. And next thing I know, I was in the studio, and he called me up, and he was frantic, and he was going, I can't find my bird. And he said, what have you done with my bird? And I said, I've done nothing with your bird, Paul. He said, have you let it go? He said, you must have done something to it. I said, I've done nothing to your bird. I swear I've done nothing to your bird. And that bird, it hid. So he must have realised he was in trouble. So George hid up the chimney and sat on the ledge in the chimney for the whole day until about 6 in the evening. He decided to show his face or his beak. Paul, I suppose you could say I was part of Paul's legacy. Hopefully I'm part of Paul's legacy. And also my brother. He introduced my brother into the industry at the age of 11. He asked my brother to come down to London, and he did some vocals for Paul in the studio. Paul paid him a wad of money, cash in his hand, for the session. An 11-year-old, his eyes were like, you know. And on the way home, I can remember my brother turning to me and saying, Dale, I says, what? He said, I know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I says, what's that? He says, I'm going to be a muso. And yeah, he became a musician. He still is a musician. He's a musician, he's a producer, he's a writer, he's a performer, sings, plays, multi-instrumentals, and he also mentors underprivileged children as well. So yeah, that was a spark that ignited my brother's passion, you could say. So yeah, my brother became part of Paul's legacy, hopefully. So yeah, with regards to that, I thank him, and so does my brother, for that opportunity. Paul never minced his words. I can remember being in the studio one day with him, and I think it was one of my tracks I played on, and I basically did the demo, and I played the keyboard on the demo. But I used my fingers to play the keyboard, so a lot of the solo parts I used my fingers. And I can remember the session man he had in at the time was quite a popular session man, and he was only getting paid to play this part. And he turned to Paul and said, it can't be done. It's actually a sequence. He sequenced it. So Paul came to me and asked me if I did. I said, no, I played it. So the keyboard player was adamant that it was a sequence. So Paul basically dragged me into the booth, asked me to play it again. I played it again. That was a take. Turned around to the keyboard player and went, sadly, that's it. You don't get paid. And he had to go and not get paid. So he was like, bye bye. So yeah, he didn't mince words. Great guy to work for. If you did what you're supposed to do. So yeah, I thank Paul for allowing me to be part of his legacy, and also my brother to be part of his legacy. And I'll just say God bless to you, and he'll be playing up there now and doing his thing.
Hi, my name's Jinder. I'm a singer, guitarist and songwriter. In an ideal world, I'll be filming this at home with my Viator acoustic guitar in hand, but I'm on tour at the moment, so I'm filming it in my car. I think that's something that Paul probably would have approved of and understood, being a hard-working musician himself, and somebody who knew that at times when you're on the road, you have to grab a moment to do what you can, when you can, with what you have. I feel truly blessed to have known Paul. He was a fascinating man, a man of boundless enthusiasm and innovation, both in terms of guitar playing and guitar design, musical ideas, and just boundless energy. I felt I could always turn to Paul in times of self-doubt or questioning, and I'd be buoyed up by his boundless energy, like a life jacket in the sea of music. Above all of his accolade and achievement, which he deservedly received over many years in music, his greatest accolade, perhaps, is that he was just a really bloody nice bloke. He was a good soul, somebody who was kind. He treated me as an equal when I met him, despite the fact that I was basically entirely unknown and anonymous at the time. But he took me at face value, and we shared a deep kinship and appreciation of all things to do with strange old instruments and innovative instruments and all manner of things. And I'm really glad to have known him, and I think the world is a far richer and brighter place for having had Paul in it. So I hope that you'll feel the same way, and I know many of you do. Thank you.
Hello there, my name's Bob Voice, and Paul Brett was my friend. I first met Paul back in 67 or 68, I can't quite remember. He was with Elmer Gantry's Velvet Opera, and I was a drummer in a band called Fire. And we're all having a modicum of success and enjoying our lives as young men do back in when you're 20 years old or thereabouts. But in 69, Paul left the Velvet Opera and came and joined us in Fire. He made a huge difference. He was a gifted player, and but the rot had really set in with Fire. We'd been together a long time. We'd gone through lots of ups and downs, managers, agents, God knows what, and we're all feeling a bit tired of it all. And we eventually drifted apart. And one day, Paul contacted me and said, "Look, I wouldn't mind going out and doing a few folk clubs. Will you come and play percussion with me, and we'll see what we can do?" So we did. We went out and played a few clubs. He had 3 or 4 songs. We played a couple of covers. We had enough for about a 20-minute set, something like that, which was all that was really required those days in folk clubs. And we went down really well. So much so that we both got quite enthusiastic about it. Paul went home and wrote some more songs, as he did, sitting up through the night, writing 2 or 3 sometimes in a night. And we were singing really well, and it was one of the things that we enjoyed. He wrote the songs that I could sing as well. And between us, we made a pretty good sound. But we thought it'd be a good idea to add that extra voice, you know. We were really enthused by some of the new musicians around. Crosby, Stills and Nash, Matthew Southern Comfort, you know, people like Richie Havens, you know. Woodstock had happened, and it kind of changed the whole music scene for everybody. So we contacted Dick Dufour, who was our bass player in Fire. He was a fine singer as well. And he came in, we made a good sound, we went out and played a few more folk clubs. Everything was going swimmingly well. And again, Paul came up with another idea. What about getting a flute player in? That would be rather a nice thing, add a light touch to what we were doing. And we found Nikki Higginbottom. I think she had an advert, I believe, in the New Musical Express or Melody Maker or something. Anyway, she came in, she was a fine flautist as well. And that completed the lineup, the first lineup for Paul Brett Sage. And, you know, we were off and rolling. It was really exciting times. We would turn up at Paul's house. He had a big house in Fulham, and we would rehearse in his basement, his parents' house. And we'd all get down there and learn new songs and rehearse what we already had. And Paul very often would turn up a bit bleary-eyed. He'd been up all night writing new songs. I mean, we had an album in no time at all. We went to Pie Records, met a lovely man called Peter Elderfield and another man called Cyril Stapleton, who some people might remember as a band leader, but he was an executive in those days at Pie. He gave us our first record deal. We put an album out, the very first Paul Brett Sage album. It's I'm very proud of those days, very proud of what we did in the very beginning, the first incarnation of Sage, if you like. And you know, when I think back on those times, they were glory days, they really were. Paul and I remained good friends right up until when he passed. And I still have here one of his old 12-string guitars, which I treasure, of course. I still think of him every time I pick it up to play. I hope you're resting well, my old friend. God bless you.
Well, it's nice of Michelle to ask me to say a few words about Paul, because he was such a lovely guy and great musician, great songwriter, great guitar player, and also a great friend. And I did work with him for 2 or 3 years quite intensively in the early 70s, and we were thrown into the first few gigs I did with him, proper gigs, was just me and him supporting Status Quo on a UK tour. So acoustic, violin and guitar, about 45 minutes, and then Quo, which is a bit of a contrast, but we had a good reaction to it, and the whole thing went really well. There was one particular gig in Southport Floral Hall, where there was a power cut and Quo couldn't play at all, and half the audience went home, and Paul and I just pulled our seats further forward to the front of the stage. We lowered the lights, and it was a bit like a sort of folk club in a huge hall, and the audience, what was left of them, came round and sat around in front of us, and we had a jolly good time. But the other thing that I reminded of with the Quo situation was, during that tour, Paul and I were asked to appear on the Old Grey Whistle test, and we did it. We played two numbers on it, 2 original tracks of Paul's, and Bob Voice was on drums, Dick Duffel, both from Sage, he was on bass, and one of my big claims to fame, my one big claim to fame, could be that I was probably the only person who ever wore a dressing gown on the Old Grey Whistle test. I found one in the dressing room and decided to wear it on one of the numbers. Don't ask me why, but the evidence is out there on YouTube, if you care to look.
Hi Mish, Paul was a larger than life character, and I saw your video yesterday, and it was so heartfelt. He was a very, very funny man, but my little contribution is going to be my gratefulness that he allowed me to be in the Lynn Guitar Festival, and that is an experience that I'll never forget. So thanks, Paul.
Hi Michelle, as you know, Paul and I go back a long way. Gosh, I went back to Velvet Opera days with John Ford and Hud, and of course Paul Brett Sage with Richard Dufall and Bob Voice. Gosh, and it's way back to the 60s there. I'm sitting here with a guitar. It's a Gibson L00, and this is actually a reissue. It's a prototype, in fact, of a reissue of the one that Paul favoured. I always loved that guitar that Paul had, but I think he sold it to Keith Cronshaw, hopefully for lots of money. Anyway, I have the fondest memories of Paul. And he was a huge influence on me as a guitar player, and I still rate him as one of the best I've ever heard. Anyway, I hope you're well, and hopefully we'll see you soon, and love from Catherine too. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
The shining light that was Paul is no longer with us. The physical Paul will be gone, but his abundant creative work, into which he puts so much energy, will endure. His bountiful energy in life will not have simply disappeared, for we know that energy cannot be destroyed, only altered or transformed. At school, Paul's metalwork teacher, himself an amateur guitarist, realised that Paul wasn't interested in making ashtrays. And so instead he was allowed to make a tremolo for a guitar. This may have been one of the definitive moments that set Paul off on a lifelong passion for collecting making and modifying guitars. Paul's life was totally steeped in music and the music business. He became one of the world's most famous 12-string acoustic guitar players, earning the respect of guitarists everywhere, performing and recording with endless well-known names in rock and roll. Paul was an avid collector and world-leading expert in vintage guitars, his collection of which is one of the best in the world. He was a music industry guru and influencer, a journalist, and a collector of art and memorabilia. Multi-talented is putting it lightly. Paul was also a television contributor, composer, arranger, a marketer, A&R specialist, management and production expert, and an ardent fisherman. You would call him a polymath. It was a chance meeting in the early 80s with Michelle, herself a highly successful singer, writer, director of musicals, that started off their working relationship. Even though they were at different ends of the spectrum, Michelle in musicals, Paul in rock, it made no difference, and from there on they fired up each other's inspirational talents. It was as if you put two sparklers together and got a blaze. They simply clicked and became inseparable, each enhancing the other's genius. It's been said that Paul lived 10 lifetimes in one. He never stopped. He would be forever designing, writing. He wrote for all the music magazines such as Psychedelic Baby and Acoustic Power. And he would produce a song all at once, lyrics and music, no hanging about. He'd finish one and was straight on to the next. He was a true genius with lyrics. What is amazing is that he was self-taught and would learn as much as he could about whatever he was doing. Then, having learnt to do that, he'd say, "Now, what else can I do?" Paul and his devoted partner Michelle could be found regularly at car boot sales, picking up guitars which he would improve and make adjustments to in order to support Guitars for Veterans Wales. His generosity of spirit was never in doubt, and he was generous also in a practical way. Many successful musicians and singers today can thank him for launching them into their career through his encouragement and his help. Paul loved animals and birds, crows in particular. He even named one guitar Raven. And he and Michelle would go out daily to feed the crows and the seagulls, and the horses, which they fed and watered daily. Fluffer, the cat, aged 24, misses Paul and yowls constantly, and Paul loved that cat. It's predominantly for his music that the wider world will remember Paul. He was the first person ever to write a suite for the 12-string guitar and to play it plucking with his nails. He wouldn't be strumming it. It was the first 12-string guitar suite ever written, and he called it Earthbirth. We heard a small piece of it as we came into this chapel. He re-recorded Earthbirth together with a string quartet, which was something he'd always wanted to do. And just a few months ago, he produced another album with the quartet, which he said was the best album he had ever done. He hadn't told Michelle at the time what the title of the album was, but she later discovered it was called afterlife.
Paul Brett. First met Paul along with my mate Alex, must have been about 15, 16 years ago, when Alex said, "You must go and meet this character in Pwllheli, Paul Brett. He knows everything about music and he's played with them all." So I went along, met him in Pwllheli, spoke to him for an hour, realised I hadn't got a word in edgeways, and he talked at me for an hour. What a legend, I thought. This guy must be a mate of mine. And our relationship developed ever since. Every time I come up to Abersock, I go and see Paul and Michelle and listen to his stories, listen to his huge amounts of swearing. So if I ever need to buff up on my swear words, I go and see Paul. Whenever we come along, we either go and see Paul or Paul comes round to our place at Hell's Mouth and we have an absolutely great time. He really is a great guy. I once interviewed him for a music magazine I work for. The interview was set for 30 minutes. After an hour and 20 minutes, I had to stop because there was too much in it. We decided to do a second interview in due course. So, what a legend. He really was my friend. And North Wales is just not the same place without him. Good luck, Michelle. Love you, Andrew.
Hello, my name is Lars Mullen, and I had the pleasure and the privilege of being a friend of the late Paul Brett, whilst also working with him in the music industry. I think most of us are aware of his 6-decade career as a session player for those early 60s Britpop bands and artists, and himself enjoyed chart success in a lot of them as well. He went on to be arguably the finest 12-string acoustic guitar player that the UK has also produced. But I wanted to talk about my experiences with Paul as a close friend and a musician. As a music journalist myself, I sometimes get a little bit irritated by the word unique, describing a product or a person when it or they are just not unique. Paul Brett was. He was more than one of a kind. I interviewed him many times and photographed his extensive guitar collection for guitar magazines around the world. I presented him with awards at guitar shows and recorded several videos with him. During the latter, we didn't really work from a script. Paul was a natural on the camera, and I loved how he could both be serious and humorous at the same time. He was an incredible blues historian and a unique blues historian. See, there's that word again. That still fits. His knowledge of the blues was quite incredible. I learned a lot from Paul over the years. He didn't beat about the bush. He'd tell it straight, and if he didn't agree, he'd say so. Several times during recorded interviews, I say, "Look, hang on, pause, Paul, we can't say that." And he'd say in his strong Southeast London accent, "Well, it's true, innit? It's true, innit, mate? It's true." Then sometimes I think, right, I got him in the next question. How's he going to answer this? And again, he said, "No, that's not right. That's not." They discovered a tomb in Egypt in about 3000 BC. And on the top of the mummy, there was a 3-string tambour, which is a guitar, with a plectrum on it. So what's new, mate? So what's new? I mean, with a bio that covered well over 60 plus years in the music industry, I'm reading some stuff here because my notes are just... Aside from being a blues historian, superb singer, songwriter, music composer and sound engineer, he was, like I say, one of the finest 12-string acoustic guitar players this country's ever produced. He wrote books, he was an editor, just incredible. Paul was also a very clever and talented acoustic and electroacoustic guitar, which he made a lot of them for the Vintage Guitar brand, and he used guitars from his very rare and dated guitar collection as benchmarks to make these models, obviously with upgraded hardware and better tone woods, so they actually played okay. A lot of his themes were from the 1930s, working men's guitars from the Great Depression in the USA. He loved those old guitars. And parlour guitars, small body traveller guitars for the Vintage. There's one called a Viator. Here it is. We've been recording with this one today. Cute little puppy here. Nice little puppy. Well, what I did like about Paul was there's always a story about guitars. This one's called the Viator, as I say, which is actually Latin for traveller guitar. Well, it's actually Latin for traveller. So this is turned out to be arguably one of the finest travel guitars that you can buy at the moment. Very, very popular. And it floats because it fell off my boat. So I think Paul must have designed cool 30 plus guitars for the vintage brand. And I felt so honoured when he'd call me up maybe and say, "Hey Lars, mate, I've designed another one. I'm sending you some pictures. Tell me what you think." It's hard to sum up here, but when I was writing an article about Paul for Gear News magazine a few years ago now, I was stuck for an intro that hadn't been written before or I hadn't used before. And then radio was noodling away in the background and a song came on and I looked it up since, and it's written in 1888, like an old town hall vaudeville musical type song. And this fellow was singing, "If you want to know the time, ask a policeman." And I thought, hang on a minute, I can use that. Don't like nicking things, but I put it in my own words. And I said, if you want to know anything about the blues, in brackets, the history of the blues, the guitars, the musicians, ask Paul Brett. He knew it all. He was the classic myth buster. He knew it all. Some of his stories end in fits of laughter. Paul he's missed by friends and family, of course, and then he'll be remembered by the music industry around the world.
Hi folks, Andy Mackenzie here, just saying a few words in memory of Paul. 12 months, heaven's sake, doesn't seem like 2 minutes. Every time I walk down Pathelli High Street, I imagine him turning the corner and we end up having a chat, and I'm delayed another half hour as we end up putting the world to rights. And go to guitar shows. People that know I live in Pathelli know that I knew Paul. All have to tell me what they think of him and, you know, what a great bloke he was, and particularly the work he did for vintage. And yeah, it's a huge legacy. You're sadly missed, mate. Thinking of you. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Keith Cronshaw. I had the pleasure of being able to call Paul Brett my friend. We met through his guitar festival, which year after year got bigger and better. And after a number of years, he allowed me to buy a number of his guitars, which for Paul was like parting with a child. He had to know you well before he would sell you them. I have with me a Gibson L00, which he played and loved. He played this guitar on top of the Pops and the old grey whistle test. It was fantastic being with Paul. He told the most outrageous stories and was a fantastic raconteur. I miss him terribly.
Sam Durrant here at Stiwdio Inn. I first met Paul in the back end of the 90s when I was gigging a lot with Maharishi, the Welsh language band. He booked us for a gig in Pwllheli on the back of a lorry in a car park. And on first meeting Paul, you could tell straight away this was a man who was on the path of the righteous, especially by the way he spoke of the Welsh scene and its inequality and the cliques involved with everything, which is all very true. And he had a great insight into the music business, and everything he said was true and well observed. A few years later, consequently, my wife reintroduced me to Paul. My wife Gary works for the Arts Council of Wales, and she met him a few times and suggested we got together. And eventually he came to the studio here, brought me his back catalogue of 2-inch analogue 24-track tapes, and I baked those and digitised them for him, and later on we mixed them together. It was a huge collection of music with hundreds of musicians spanning every genre you could imagine. Had everything from one of the Crays shooting a .38 pistol in time for the chorus, and the London Philharmonic Orchestra. It was just riddled with excellence and musical delights. I think whenever it was said that swearing is a sign of intelligence, they were definitely talking about Paul. He's a fellow polymath. He's wonderful, great understanding of everything. Technical, musical, business and psychological. It was a pleasure to work with. My wife and myself were we were lucky enough to spend a few days working with him once in Cardiff. It was a guitar expose for vintage guitars, and we returned from that weekend with very achy jaws. We just spent the whole time laughing. Paul was hilarious. Really was a funny man. Didn't get a word in edgeways, but he was extremely entertaining in every way. And he was a pleasure to work with, and yeah, we really are going to miss him. Love you, Paul.
Hi there, my name's Phil Leggiter. I'm Paul's nephew. The story I'd like to share is one of the first meeting with Paul. So I was 10 or 11, maybe 11, and we were heading down to Butlins, which is the facility that Michelle and Paul ran the entertainment for, and I'd never met them before. So we had a trip down, we stayed with them in their house. Paul took me fishing. I'd never been fishing before. Beach casting in particular was very exciting. We caught sea bream and had them on the beach as a barbecue, as a family, which is lovely. And then Paul bought me a fishing rod, £100 I remember, which was an amazing amount of money, especially since he'd only just really met me. I thought it was really generous, an amazing gift. And then one evening we went to a show. Now thinking about it, I don't know whether or not a 10 or 11-year-old should have been allowed in the show, but obviously I was family, so was allowed in with my mum and dad. And obviously I'd spent time with Paul and Michelle and lovely people, and they were dressed normally. And then the next thing I saw was, Michelle in this, amazing dancing outfit with dancing girls, and Paul in, I think, a Rocky Horror Picture Show outfit on stage, singing and dancing. Both of them were amazing, and I was blown away, really blown away. I'd never seen anything like it. I also remember backstage meeting people that I'd seen on TV, so like Frank Carson and Tom O'Connor and Bernie Clifton, and probably other people as well for the shows. And it was just an amazing experience. It was maybe a week, even less than a week that we were there. Lovely location, beach, fishing, shows, or a show at least. And then I remember on my way back crying because I was so disappointed to be leaving, and I'd had such a fantastic experience. So that's my story, and it was the start of a relationship. So my dad is Paul's cousin. I think the relationship that Paul and I had was much more of a uncle and nephew. We kind of worked together on Paul's websites a little bit as I started in my career, and then as I had a family and didn't have as much time for that. And as Paul started to do things like that himself, I was less involved. But, hopefully that was a really fantastic story for me, and a time I look back to with much fondness. And I'll need to dig out the picture I have of me with Michelle and all the dancing girls, because it was amazing.
Hi, it's John Etheridge here, and I'm making this video to remember that wonderful character and friend Paul Brett, who we sadly miss, and we're remembering on the anniversary of his death. And I just want to say that Paul I knew mainly from his great guitar festival up in Lynn and Clin, and how I did it a few times, and it was a wonderful event, brilliantly organised by him. It was always good fun because he was such a character, and him and Michelle were great fun to be with, very welcoming. And I knew about Paul obviously in the 70s. He was pretty well known then, Paul Brett Sage. In fact, when I met him the first day at the festival, I said, "Are you the Paul Brett?" Because he was a player, and so that was really, really, great setting, great festival, and always terrific people there. So I really enjoyed that and hanging out with him and Michelle. So we miss him, and obviously we miss him. And so let's remember him on this anniversary. Thanks, bye.
Hello, Michelle. For goodness sake, I've got so many memories of Paul, all great memories. The first time I saw Paul play was at the pub called the White Bear in Hounslow with Paul Brett Sage. I was absolutely astonished at his stage persona and his guitar playing. I mean, I've never heard anybody play electric, well, actually it was acoustic guitar that fast. It really was amazing. The other memory I have of Paul, of course, is when we were meeting up at JHS and the events. Paul was, I made some notes here because there's so much to remember, but Paul really was a leader, not a follower. He was a creator. He made things happen, didn't he? He created the Lynn Guitar Festival. He created all those designs he did with Johnny Joyce all those years ago. And then with JHS, look what he created, the whole Paul Brett range. For me, one of the great ones was the Paul Brett Viator, which I still use. In fact, I recorded a Paul Brett Viator on a track called the Anna Fantasia on one of my albums. And I also used the Statesboro 12 string on an opening track called One for Billy, which is on my Scattered Chapters album. And I want to show you something, Michelle. This is a portrait that a friend of mine, lovely Sue Martin, did of me. And the guitar I'm holding is that very 12 string. So there's proof positive of the influence that the man had on the instruments I played and everything else. I took great pleasure in the fact that we did those two EPs together, the Traveller one, which featured the Viator, and recently the Raven guitar. It was an absolute joy to do that. Such was the respect I had for Paul. It wasn't my product, but I believed in what he was doing, and I just wanted to help, you know. That's really all that mainly springs to mind, is that we all miss him dreadfully, and his legacy lives on. It really does.
Hi, Michelle's asked me to say a few words about working with Paul. I work for Cherry Red Records. I'm the director of catalogue there, and yeah, I really enjoyed everything we did with Paul in terms of his music. Truth be told, I didn't actually meet Paul, but he was a pleasure to work with. We did a lovely anthology commemorating his career, and I always found Paul really helpful in terms of aiding us in what we were trying to do, and obviously his musical CV was to die for. I loved his early stuff with Paul Brett Sage, and of course he was in Tintin Abbey and Elmer Gantry's Velvet Opera and various 60s groups, and I loved all the stuff he played on. So yeah, it was obviously very sad when we heard that Paul had died, and hopefully we can continue to be the custodians of much of his music.
Hi, Pete and Glenn here. Just wanted to say thanks, Paul, for letting us be part of your life and for sharing your life experiences and memories with us from your days in music. You certainly told us some very funny and interesting tales. We miss you, but we know that you're still around up there in the clouds making more music and looking out for Michelle. It was great knowing you, Paul. Keep on playing, always thinking about you. Lots of love, and lots of love to you, Michelle, too. Bye.
Bye. Great knowing you.
I did 3 albums with Paul. The first one, Paul Brett. The second one, live at the Marquee with Nick Sterling on cello. And the third one with Dave Griffiths on violin and mandolin, clocks. And I remember going into the office at Bradley's Records. I think Bradley's was a subsidiary of ITV Music, and Paul and I went to the office in Bruton Street, and we walked in with our instruments and played to the guy behind the desk, and we got a deal. I remember looking forward, great anticipation of getting an advance in a couple of weeks, which came through. So that was a pretty good time. And also, Paul was very good at giving interviews to promote the albums and the gigs. And he knew Jerry Gilbert very well at Sounds magazine and somebody else at the MM. And we used to go to Fleet Street afternoon lunches. And in the old days when Fleet Street was teeming with journalists in pubs, and Paul used to do most of the talking, and I had a really good lunch, and we sort of crawled out of there at about 5 o'clock. So, and also we got some good spreads in the MM. I think we had a whole page once, and Sounds magazine. And also I've got to thank Paul very much for introducing me to Johnny Joyce, who was a great guy, great guitar player, and he turned me on to other sorts of music like Ry Cooder and other things. And Paul King, who I'm sure hopefully is still very much with us, he was in Mungo Jerry at the time, and since then I've worked with Paul a lot and recorded with him. And then that led to playing with the Danny Lane band, because he was a friend of Paul's and he used to come to some of our gigs. And also, going back to the early days with Paul, we toured with Ralph McTell, supporting Ralph. And in later years, I did a lot of work with Ralph. So without Paul, I wouldn't have had those contacts. So thank you, Paul. Miss you. And it was good to know you were around. And I'm sorry that I haven't been to see you in later years, but thank you.
Frank, Joan and Paul were neighbours of ours in Homestead Road, Fulham. And Paul was 14 years older than me, which was great when it came to sorting out his King's Road wardrobe. Though I never really did find a reason to wear those blue and white striped trousers, and never did get my hands on that German fighter pilot's jacket. We did get some unexpected gifts. A pair of chipmunks and Tina the rabbit. And on the subject of pets, after a gig one morning, Joan, Paul's mum, walked into the lounge to come face to face with a full-size crocodile. Luckily it was stuffed. No one did know where that come from. At the flat, there was the greeting from the two parrots. One would say, hello, 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 and the other would say, F off, F off, F off. The flat, there was guitars everywhere. And luckily, none got taken after Michelle disturbed an intruder in the early 80s. My main memory of Paul was the fishing trips to the lakes and rivers west of London. He always caught more than me. Great times. So many memories. Never forgotten.
Hello, darling. It's Michelle Breeze here. Paul Brett's other half. And this is Fluffer. Fluffer was Paul's cat. It was our cat. And Fluffer is 26 years old now, aren't you? 26 this year. And he misses Daddy, don't you? He misses Daddy. Look at the camera. Don't be camera shy. He misses his daddy ever so much. And he yowls since Daddy died, since Paul died. He yowls every single day, walking around the house looking for him, yowling. He's not been very well, have you, since Daddy died? Oh, we shouldn't be surprised, would we? We won't be surprised if Daddy comes to get you soon. Getting on a bit now, aren't we, darling? Hey, yes, he's a beautiful boy. He's not as fat as he was, of course, because he's getting on for a bit, aren't you? Well, to say he's missed is an understatement. My whole life, 42 years we were together, and we wrote together and performed together and everything else. We wrote musicals together. We just did everything together, really. Paul did the, you going to fidget? Paul did all the music and lyrics as well, and I do write the scripts and lyrics and stuff like that. We do everything together. I did the sets and scenery and the costumes and all that stuff. We were doing a musical, Elizabeth I, which has been stopped on 3 occasions. the first occasion because I had a brain tumour, which had to come out. And Paul, you know, nursed me all the way through that. I wasn't expecting to come out at all. In fact, when I went to the hospital to have the operation, I wrote him a letter and left it on the side for him because I'd lost my brother and my sister, both to brain tumours, and I wasn't expecting to come out. So I left him a letter, and I've forgotten all about it. Are you going? I'm going to say goodbye to Daddy. Say goodbye to Daddy. Goodbye to Daddy. You love your Daddy, don't you? Oh, he's off. Whoops, careful. It's very agile for 26. Yeah, so I wrote him this letter, and that was that, because I left it on the side to tell him how much I loved him, because I didn't expect to come out. He nursed me all the way through that when I did come out, you know. He used to drag me out and make me walk every day, and when I was in screaming pain, I couldn't even scream, you know. He would go and get the ice packs and put them on my head and take my blood pressure all the time and give me the tablets and that. He just cared for me right the way through and brought me right through all of that. Then I started rehearsals for Elizabeth I, which is, we did Boudica, and then we wrote Elizabeth I, and I did started to try and rehearse it, but I just didn't have the strength to do that at the time. So then I rewrote it with a narrator, because that gave me time to do the costume changes and not, you know, do it as a one-woman show, so I didn't. And so we did the narrator, and then just as we were 3 weeks into the rehearsals again, COVID came in. So that was that, it was gone again. And then just as it was sort of just getting over COVID, Geoffrey Atherton, who was the narrator, was brilliant, had a beautiful speaking voice. You could listen to him for hours. He was really beautiful. He just dropped dead with a heart blood clot. And I just couldn't replace him. I just couldn't. So I rewrote it again back. By this time, about 5 years had passed now, and by this time I was much stronger. So I rewrote it back as a one-woman musical, the 24 costume changes, etc., on stage in front of the audience and all that lark. And then we were 3 weeks into rehearsals again when Paul fell ill. And then, of course, we know what happened then. I haven't done it. I've been tidying like mad, trying to tidy, because Paul was not tidy. He was not a tidy person when it came to his studio. On the floor, it looked like black spaghetti bolognese with all the wires. How he found anything, I have no idea, but that's how he worked. He always knew where everything was, and he just could pick the wire out, plug it in, and away he went. Anyway, I wanted a particular song. I put Flow in, which you'll probably hear in a minute. I put Flow into Elizabeth I because it really is such a beautiful song that Paul had written. And halfway through the writing of the song, I said, I need a song from Elizabeth's love of her life, that he left her before he died rather. And I said, I need a song from him, you know, a letter from him. And Paul said, all right. So I went to bed as usual, and I got up in the morning. He said, have you seen it? I said, what? He said, the CD, it's on your sewing machine. I said, no, I haven't seen it. And he said, well, go on and have a listen. So I went and got the CD, and I said, have you done it? You've done it all? Yeah. Oh, typical. So I played it, and I couldn't believe it, because I'd forgotten all about this, and I'd written him this letter before I went for the brain tumour, which is now about 5 years before. Forgotten all about it. And when I put the music on, it was Paul singing it, and he'd put the letter I'd left him, he put it to music and called it On the Other Side. I couldn't believe it when I heard it. And it was perfect for the musical. Absolutely perfect. As usual, his stuff was always perfect. And I played him singing it at the funeral as well. So he's very, very, very missed. Cat misses him. I miss him. My life was full of love and laughter being with Paul. He wasn't an easy person because he was a genius, but he was funny. You'll see at the end of this, we started to film his history of guitar, and he wanted to be the gorilla that threw the stick in the air and then caught the guitar. That was the opening scene that he was going to start the film with. And we went, it was the night before I had my brain tumour out. He said, can we film this just in case you can't do it? In case you don't come out, he said. I said, thanks, darling. He said, we'll go. And we went up the Glenny Widder in Llanbedrog, up halfway up the mountain, which nearly killed me, I must say, and went to film Paul being this gorilla. And you'll see it later. That was my life. He's very missed. Very missed. But on the anniversary of his death, when this film comes out, I am going to start the rehearsals for Elizabeth I, because it is his music and his wonderful writing, and it's got to be done. Even if it kills me, I should do it. I loved him. Fluffer loved him. And his music and his beautiful guitars that he did will live on. Every Sunday we used to go to Car Boots, and he'd buy guitars, do them up and give them to the RSPCA. About 2 a week he used to do. He loved animals. He was a very loving person, and I loved him. So if you're up there watching, mate, see you soon. I love you.
And now, Michelle is going to sing a song written by Paul called Flow. Michelle.
Rivers flow into the sea, they never look behind. That's the way that life should be. Seek and you will find. Formed inside your mother's womb, safe in watery heart, till you're forced from peaceful grace, slept until you cried. First breath, first tear, first laugh, first pain, first milk, first light. First rain, first coo, first crawl, first stumble, first delight. And through the years that lie ahead, many changes you will see. Like the tide, you'll ebb and flow to face your destiny. Wherever you are born, whoever rivers flow into the sea, they never look behind. In the blink of an eye we live and die, and ask the question why. Why are we here? Who gives us life? Who takes it all away? Who guides us down the river from the first to final day? You will always be mine.
Too late to say goodbye, too late to wonder why I never really told you that I loved you. I always hold you near, my empty heart is filled with tears. I will wait for you on the other side. Seasons will change, years may pass by, my love for you has never, ever died. I see us both still young, without a care, our song unsung. Together we have danced and touched the heavens. The emptiness echoes, it bounces off the walls. The silence overwhelming, now darkness starts to fall. Too late to say goodbye. As I write, I sit and cry. I will wait for you on the other side.
Hello, my name's Tom Newman. I've produced a few records.
And again, I forgot my name.
Take 2, take 4, take
Senior
7.
moment.
You forgot his name. Hello, my name's Tom Newman and I've produced a few records.
I'm Paul Brett and I've played a few guitars.
And we've decided to start a new record label called VD Discs. Viral Discs! Hello, my name's... Oh no. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. My name is Tom Newman and I have produced a few records.
Hey, my name is Paul Brett. I've played a few guitars.
And we shall start a new record label called Viral Discs.
I know I look rough, but it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So you'll have to put up with it. Paul, you were a unique person. No one could replace you. No one could emulate you. You were honourable. You were selfless. And you would give rather than take. You would rant and rave with utter disgust at greed and corruption. And you would expose it at every opportunity. You would never ignore it. And you'd never succumb to the bribes offered to shut you up. Oh dear. Once an idea came into your head and you started the project, you'd never give up until it was completed. You never gave up or lost heart. And obstacles were a challenge to you. And you thrived on the challenge. You would enjoy working them out. And working out how you could get over it, how you could get through it, and how you could turn it to the advantage of the project so it would culminate in success. You never lost heart. You never gave up. And when it was completed, you would move swiftly on as though it had never happened onto your new project. You never looked back. And you never repeated yourself when it came to any of your art or music or anything like that. You'd move on swiftly to your next project. And I believe you moved on now to your next project. And I know you will be excited and invigorated. And my love is with you at all times. And my love will never leave you, as your love would never leave me. Enjoy, darling, because you're in heaven and you couldn't enjoy anything more, really. I miss you. Fluffer misses you. And hundreds upon hundreds of people who have written to me miss you. I love you, darling.
I'm a chair of a charitable community project called Guitars for Veterans here in Wales. The project was started to help with mental well-being of military veterans and their families through the healing power of music. As an organisation, we supply acoustic guitars and the opportunity to learn through the online and group sessions. The guitars being just a medium through which we can combat loneliness and bring our members together amongst like-minded people. The guitar we chose as our gold standard was the vintage Statesboro, which we later found out was designed by Paul. So purely by chance, we made contact with Paul by email and then talking on the telephone, where he was keen to understand what the project was all about. Paul was one of life's nice people, a real gentleman that could see the benefit of what we were achieving and fully understood how learning to play a guitar helps with mental health. Paul was a truly admirable man who became one of our ambassadors and supported our programme over the time we knew each other. Sadly, we only met occasionally in person, but I am very honoured to have had the chance to meet and become friends with such a nice man. It was such a shock when Paul fell ill and went downhill so quickly. He will be missed by so many whose lives he touched. We hope to continue Paul's legacy in this important project into the future and will always remember Paul and the support he gave us. God bless.
This is Paul Smith talking about Paul Brett. I was first introduced to Paul Brett 14 years ago in 2011. We developed the first two vintage Paul Brett models in a 6 and 12 string version based around an old Stella guitar from Paul's vast collection of guitars. I sent the guitar to our factory in China and they produced some samples for Paul to check, which he loved. Paul's sole criteria was never mind the price, what does it effing sound like? This was the start of a long and fruitful working relationship resulting in the development of over 21 models under Paul's name. Thousands of his guitars have been sold around the world in over 100 countries worldwide, with his latest creation, the vintage Fret Dancer, released in January 2024 at the NAMM show in Anaheim, California, USA. The Fret Dancer was designed by Paul as a tribute to his long-time friend and mentor Johnny Joyce, and has now become a tribute to Paul himself, who sadly passed on the date that I returned from that show. Weirdly, the same date that his friend Johnny had also passed on. I didn't know what to make of Paul when we first met. He probably scared me a little bit. But after spending time together with him, working on the guitar project, something clicked and we went on to become very close friends and partners in crime. He was a mentor, a sounding board, a confidant, and actually an inspiration to me. Plus he was extremely funny with an amazing sense of humour. Never one to hold back, he said what he thought and had a fine command of the English language, especially the expletives. Onwards and upwards was usually how we ended our calls together. I would ring him regularly on my drive home from work when I had a good hour to chat. He'd always laugh and say I'd interrupted him watching Flog It or something else, but he was so generous with his time and was always interested in what was going on and always asked about everyone in the company. His enthusiasm and love for life was overwhelming, always planning, looking for angles, promoting and using his vast contacts to look at new ways of promoting the guitars. Together we organised concerts, events, worked with charities constantly, and Paul could always get hold of a load of celebrities to help promote the brand. Paul never stopped. He was never short of an idea, and I loved having meals out with him and Michelle when the banter never stopped all night, and usually by the end of the meal the swear jar was overflowing, but the laughter never ever stopped. This is the same guy who sent me a photo of him, his consultant GP and the nurses in the hospital, holding one of his guitars so we could use it for PR. It's now a year since he passed, and I miss him every day. I think of him a lot, and he leaves a big hole in the lives of many people. His memory will live on through his music and his legacy of thousands of guitars bearing his name for many years to come. I'd like to remember Paul with a huge grin on his face and a guitar in his hands, loving the music. Cheers, Paul. Love you, my friend, Paul Smith.
Paul was a lovely man. He was always there for help and advice for anyone who needed it. I first met Paul in '94 in Butlins, where he was in charge of the production shows. And we did the Rocky Horror Show, and I had the pleasure of seeing Paul wearing stockings and suspenders every week. Some things you just can't unsee.
Hiya, my name is Yvonne, and I have a cat called Simba. Simba is 4 years old. Simba's favourite people are Paul and Michelle. Every time I call Paul or Michelle's name, Simba would run to the window and greet them. And she just loves seeing them, and I know she loves them very much. This is the photo I have of Paul and Simba. This one is my favourite picture, and I have one with Michelle and Simba. Paul, me and Simba, we miss you very much. And we both love you. Simba Grace.
Hi, my name's John Leggiter, and I'm the cousin of Paul and live up in Bonnie, Scotland now. My earliest recollection of Paul was when he came to stay with my mum and dad, his uncle and aunt, way back when he was a teenager, and he arrived with his fishing rod. He was heavily into fishing at that time, and I remember accompanying him. He took me with him down to the River Trent, which runs through Gainsborough, where we lived, and him trying day after day, and if my recollection's correct, he never caught anything, but he showed a remarkable strength in trying to pull himself a fish of some sort, but he took it all on the chin, and we became friends at at a very early age. Later on, when I started work, I did a period in London at Hammersmith tax office and stayed with Frank and Joan, his mum and dad, in Fulham. And again, he was much older now and doing quite well in the music industry. And he took me one evening to the West End to see the Rocky Horror Show, and picked up the tab for the show and for the taxi, and I was getting some sort of allowance, but he wouldn't let me pay anything. Typical Paul, really. An all-round good guy. And later on, my wife and I think my son Philip has referred to this visit we had to Butlins in Fwelly, where we were taken to the show and introduced to all the acts, Frank Carson and company, beforehand, and had a marvellous week, fishing and showing and going to the pub. And I thought then, I wish we lived much nearer and were able to meet more regularly, but he was very much a legator, a man unto himself, like his dad, and I think that everyone who met him was impressed with his honesty, and so I will certainly miss him, as will everyone who ever came across him, both in his business and in his private life.
Hello everybody, my name's Billy. I first met Paul at a guitar show in Birmingham. I'm pretty sure he was watching me play. We just started chatting afterwards, and I'm sure as a lot of you guys know, he was a super friendly, funny guy. So kicked it off straight away, stayed in touch after the show, and he invited me to play at a festival he used to run called the Lynn Guitar Festival. We did that with another guitarist called Rory Evans, and honestly that entire weekend was just hilarious. I have such good memories of that weekend. I'll attach a couple photos to the side here. But yeah, we were just having a blast. It was honestly, I have such good memories with that man, and especially of that weekend. You know, we really got close. And yeah, it's really sad to see him go, but he was such a real genuine guy, and he was hilarious. Every conversation with him was having me laugh. But yeah, really sad to see him go, to be honest. But he's left a great legacy, designed loads of guitars, as well as just being a really, really nice, genuine guy. So yeah, lots of love to you, Paul. I know you're still watching down, but I wish you all the best.
Just a quick few words about my dear friend. Well, he was more like a big brother I never had really to me than a friend. I never really listened to anybody in my life, but Paul, I don't know, he had something about him, and I listened to Paul. What can you say about Paul? Well, firstly, Paul, at the moment I'm out on Pwllheli Beach, which I knew you and Michelle loved. But there's no birds about. That's strange. Maybe it's because Michelle's not here and you're feeding them. I'll just show you a quick view of the beach. Beautiful beach. Like I said, like Paul and Michelle loved Pwllheli. And it's just strange there's no birds here for you, Paul. Anyway, yeah, what can I say about Paul? One of a kind you were, my friend. One of a kind. Gentleman. Friend. Honest. Just said it as it was, basically. There was no BS with Paul. Absolutely no BS. Like I say, said it as it was. I could be here all day talking about like a few of the adventures I went on with Paul. Like the time he took me to London and all that. I'm not going to bore you with all that. Yeah, like I say, Paul, we're all missing you down here, my friend. And I hope you're looking down at me now while I'm walking along the beach with your little friend, Riley. You can see her there, which you absolutely adored, and she adored you. Yeah, I hope you're looking down at me and smiling. And don't worry about Michelle, Michelle's fine. She's keeping busy. So, on that note, my friend, until I meet you again up there with all the other angels, you take care, my friend. I'll see you soon. Okay, my friend, see you later. Bye, Paul.
This is a tribute to Paul. He was a really good friend and we had some good times with him, some good laughs, him and Michelle. As you can see, we're still doing a load of rubbish work like he was always used to us doing. And we do miss him. And it was lovely to see them both. They used to come most Sundays and we were out for a meal a couple of times. He was always quite a generous man. And we really do miss him. And John?
Yeah, Paul's a great character and a great laugh, and I miss him terribly. We always used to meet up most Sundays on a Sunday afternoon. He'd come in the shop, tell us loads of stories about somebody down the road causing trouble, and it was a great laugh, and I miss Paul terribly, and I wish he was still here.
And another thing was, he always had so many good stories to say. So that's about it from us.
So, thank you.
Hi Julia.
Hi Karen.
Bore da, I'm in Wales. What we should say is it's taken us at least 45 minutes to work out how to talk to each other. And now I'm videoing it on my iPhone, and hopefully Sam will work his wonderful edited magic.
Yes, maybe we should explain that.
So we are the duo formerly known as Climax.
The International Climax. This, you see, we were always in tune, in time with each other.
That's why Michelle and Paul used to shout at us. And we met the legends that are Michelle Breeze and Mr. Paul Brett at Butlins. Pwllheli. When we were mere whippersnappers.
My earliest memory of Paul was at Pwllheli, Butlins, because whilst we were over the bridge in the Empire Theatre, they were over at the other side of the bridge in what was then the Gaiety Theatre, which was then the Cabaret Bar.
The venue.
Well, that was the other thing. I remember we were quite sort of low key, really, as the children's entertainers. So when we met Paul and Michelle in Pwllheli, we used to go into Pwllheli once a week to cash our cheque for our payment, and
because we were desperate for the money.
See Paul and Michelle, and you'd be standing on the corner of
you'd hear them. You'd hear them before you saw them.
And often we'd meet outside Woolworths, and Paul was the only person again that I knew who could get the F word into the middle of a word, but in a really loud voice in Pwllheli, which was fairly conservative at that point. And we'd be like, I can't believe what he's saying, and then Michelle would be, Paul, stop it, Paul, and he'd carry on regardless, never worrying what people thought, which I think, from what we hear subsequently when Paul and Michelle were living in Pwllheli, long after all the shows that we'd finished doing the shows, he did a lot of good work in Pwllheli with the council and everything, having
Chamber of Trade.
And I think it was probably his forthrightness that got all those things done. But our time with Paul, I used to spend a lot of time on the technical side, so going to Stage Electric. You did not accompany us on the trips to Stage Electrics.
Couldn't be asked.
types of speaker and pyrotechnic.
Pyrotechnics.
And we'd come back with our pyrotechnics, couldn't wait to set them up and have them at the end of the Les Mis routine or Bat Out of Hell.
We nearly got killed several times.
Those pyrotechnics did on occasion light up the stage in more ways than one with our dancers' costumes and my hair getting caught by things. You suddenly realise your wig was melting. In all, the efforts were to make the spectacle much more on the stage, which we did.
On that, one of my favourite moments and memorable moments was when he was Alice Cooper. Because he used to dress.
He was in a way, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, and he was either Rod Stewart or Alice Cooper, wasn't he? But this one was he was Alice Cooper, and you and I were his little sidekicks, his backing singers, dressed in schoolgirls' outfits and outrageous rock-style schoolgirl outfits, and we were singing "School's Out," and he used to really love it and get off on it, and it was brilliant. I thought, I'm a rock god. I'm on stage with Paul Brett singing a rock. This is it. My career's only going to go downhill from here, and indeed it did.
His Rod Stewart he really did look like him.
He did, and he sounded like him.
He really did. And, when we were on tour or in Butlins, you could see how it affected certainly the female members of the audience. It did look and sound so like him.
It was brilliant.
And I think it was his sort of alter ego when he was able to get up on the stage rather than, very often he was doing sound and lights or controlling something technical or sometimes in the band with his guitar and sort of fairly stationary. But when he got up on stage to do his performances, he's every bit the entertainer.
Oh my God, yeah.
But again, when we were touring, it took time to set things up.
Yeah.
And often he'd be standing there in his, scruffy clothes that we all came just in our scruffs and then got into our costumes. He'd be standing there in his normal clothes with the guitar around his neck, helping the members who often sort of had turned up for that particular performance. So they were all reading off the music and trying. And he'd be doing, and then he'd get onto the stage and just be whoop straight in there.
Brilliant.
Just incredible,
It was a very memorable part of our lives, wasn't it? And it's a massive part of my growing up years. And it was very emotional for us too, going back up and seeing Mish and going to the funeral and hearing the news on the day. It was the first time I think in my life that I've lost somebody that I feel is really significant.
He and Michelle shaped our career. We'd started as the kids' entertainers, but we were wanting to go further, and they kind of picked us up and developed that. It was always just incredible.
Mind-blowing. He's a huge memory and fills a huge space in my life, which I won't forget.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we both just like to say, Paul, we miss you, and you were fucking awesome.
No, you haven't done it right. You're supposed to get the F word in the middle.
You say it then. You say it.
He would have said, you were fan-fucking-tastic.
Yay!
Hello, I'm Clive Carroll, and this is my wife, Lily Neal. And today we'd like to share some thoughts and stories with you about a good old friend of ours who's sadly missed, and that is Paul Brett. And we first met Paul when both he and Michelle trekked down to darkest Essex to visit Lovejoy territory, and we weren't living too far away from there at the time, so we all went out for dinner one evening, and it was great to kind of meet them and get to find out what their interests were, and they were pretty extraordinary.
Paul had come with this amazing antique harp, which was a really special instrument, and he was showing it to us, and we realized we actually had a lot in common in terms of interests and in the weird and wonderful.
And shortly after that, actually, we were eyeing up some antique furniture and discovered that it was resting in a place that wasn't too far away from where Paul and Michelle were living, right? So we trekked off the Cracker Sparrows
In a white transit van.
in a white transit van, and nothing else, no packing materials.
We just didn't think of it.
So we pulled up. We loaded the guy very kindly helped us load it into this van. And we thought, well, we'll drop in on Paul and Michelle anyway, just to say hello. We had no idea. We'd never been there before. We walked into a parallel universe.
Amazing studio. Amazing to see about all their projects and everything.
Yeah, with amazing instruments everywhere. And Michelle was putting together an Elizabethan dress or something, gargantuan thing. It was really incredible, and they were so generous to us as well that day. They helped us with packing materials like, double bed mattresses, sleeping bags, about 6 sleeping bags,
padding to take care of their precious antiques.
So it was great to get to know them a little bit, and of course, it was a huge privilege to have played Paul's Clean Guitar Festival. So once again, we'll sorely miss good old Paul, and we look forward to catching up with Michelle at some point in the near future.
Hang on.
Are you going to stand up? Do you think you could manage, or do you just going to put
get the arm
it over?
on here so I can get the arms in. There we are. Now I'll have to stand up and you have to do my arse up. So, whose bright idea was this?
Yours. Jeez, looks a bit awful, darling.
You're not going to see that. You would have monkeys too.
Stop it. Stop it. Right, here's your stick. Look, go on, and are you going to get up the hill? Are you going up the hill? What have you got here?
What?
Oh, leaf.
What?
Looked like your thing was hanging out.
I've got to try and get up the fucking hill now.
Can you see?
No.
Dear. This is going to be great. Somebody will ring the RSPCA and have you shot. Take one.
What?
Take one. Take one.
Can't see nothing.
No, we can't either.
I'll stand up a bit.
I think so, darling, yes. It would be a good idea if you did some acting. The monkey's not supposed to laugh. He looks like he's having a real whale of a time.
Hey?
Have you lost your stick now? Don't fall down the bloody stairs. Things I'll have to do. Have you lost it? Oh, he's bloody lost it.
These hands.
You sound like Max Spygraves.
I can't grip anything.
Oh dear. Dear. Shame. This was a good idea, didn't I?
Hey?
I said this was going to be a good idea today.
Does that look any good?
I think you should hold the stick up the other way myself, because it's got more interest the other end. That's it, it's got a thing on it. That's better. Yeah, that's better. That's more interesting.
It'll have to be quick.
Well, it will.
Film it.
I am. Don't bash the plant. Good. That's an angry... Hang on, I'll do a close-up.
Hey?
Let me do a close-up now. Okay, do it again. Do it again.
I'm out of breath.
Okay.
Oh, I can't do any more.
The glories of show business.
You've been wearing these fucking tights?
No, I haven't. If I'd known, I would have. Cheer you up. Oh dear. This was my life while Paul was alive.